My name is Scarlett Monroe, and I'm 28 years old. Last week I received a desperate voicemail from my mother. The same woman who 15 years ago stood up at my brother's graduation dinner and toasted our successful children while deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. That night shattered everything I believed about family loyalty and unconditional love. What started as a simple family celebration became the catalyst that drove me to disappear completely, build a billion-dollar empire, and watch from the shadows as karma finally caught up with the people who were supposed to love me most. Before I tell you exactly how I went from the family disappointment to having my parents literally begging for my forgiveness, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because this tale of family vengeance is about to get wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the black sheep becomes the golden goose. Growing up in Westchester County, New York, the Monroe family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My father, Richard Monroe, was a successful corporate lawyer, and my mother, Patricia, was a prominent socialite who organized charity galas. We lived in a sprawling colonial house, with manicured gardens that were featured in the local lifestyle magazine twice. But inside those pristine walls, a different story unfolded. I was the middle child sandwiched between my older brother Marcus and younger sister Victoria. Marcus was the golden boy, Harvard-bound quarterback of the football team, and everything my parents dreamed of in a son. Victoria was the princess, beautiful, charming, and destined for modeling contracts that my mother orchestrated from the time she was 12. Then there was me, awkward bookish Scarlett, who preferred coding to cheerleading and spent more time with computers than people. While Marcus brought home trophies and Victoria brought home modeling contracts, I brought home academic awards that somehow never made it to the family mantle. My straight A's were expected, not celebrated. My science fair victories were footnotes in conversations dominated by Marcus's latest football conquest or Victoria's newest photo shoot. The family dynamics were subtle but crushing. During dinner conversations, my parents would beam as they discussed Marcus's college prospects or Victoria's latest audition. When the conversation turned to me, if it turned to me at all, it was usually about why I couldn't be more social or why I spent so much time playing with computers. "Scarlett, honey, you need to think about your future," my mother would say, her voice dripping with concern that felt more like disappointment. "Computer stuff is fine as a hobby, but you need something more substantial, more feminine." My father would nod in agreement, barely looking up from his legal briefs. "Your mother's right. Maybe you should consider something in education or healthcare. Something stable." They never understood that what I was doing wasn't just playing with computers. By 15, I was already building websites for local businesses, and had created 3 different apps that were gaining traction in online communities. But in their eyes, anything that didn't involve traditional success markers like sports scholarships or beauty pageants wasn't worth acknowledging. The isolation grew deeper during family gatherings. Extended relatives would fawn over Marcus's football achievements and Victoria's budding modeling career. When introduced, I was always our other daughter or the smart one, which felt more like a consolation prize than a compliment. I learned to smile and nod while feeling completely invisible in a room full of people who shared my DNA. School wasn't much better. While I excelled academically, I struggled socially. My few friends were fellow computer enthusiasts who understood my passion for technology but couldn't fill the void left by my family's indifference. I threw myself into coding, spending countless nights building complex programs and dreaming of a future where my skills would be recognized and valued. The breaking point came during my junior year of high school. I had been working for months on a revolutionary app that could streamline small business inventory management. It was sophisticated, user-friendly, and had the potential to disrupt an entire industry. When I finally worked up the courage to show it to my parents, hoping for even a glimmer of pride or interest, their reaction was devastating. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, barely glancing at my laptop screen. "But don't you think you should be focusing on more important things, like your SATs, or maybe joining some clubs that would look good on college applications?" My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Scarlett, this computer phase needs to end soon. You need to start thinking seriously about your future." That night, I realized with crushing clarity that I would never be enough for them. No matter what I achieved, no matter how innovative or successful my work became, I would always be the disappointment sandwiched between their two perfect children. That realization planted the first seeds of what would eventually become my complete disappearance from their lives. But I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. Marcus's high school graduation party was supposed to be a celebration of our family's first college-bound child. Harvard had officially accepted him with a partial football scholarship, and my parents spared no expense in throwing what they called the party of the century. They rented the country club, hired a professional photographer, and invited everyone who mattered in our social circle. I spent weeks helping with preparations, designing digital invitations, creating a slideshow presentation of Marcus's achievements, and even building a custom website for guests to leave congratulatory messages. My contributions were acknowledged with distracted thank yous, but I told myself that this was normal family support. The party itself was everything my parents had envisioned. Marcus looked handsome in his navy blazer, graciously accepting congratulations from family, friends, teachers, and coaches. Victoria, stunning in a designer dress my mother had chosen, charmed everyone with her wit and beauty. I wore a simple black dress that felt appropriate for someone whose role was to blend into the background. As the evening progressed, I watched my parents beam with pride as they introduced Marcus to various important guests. "This is our son, the Harvard football player," my father would say, his chest puffed with pride. "We couldn't be more proud of what he's accomplished." When it came time for toasts, my father stood up champagne glass, raised his voice carrying across the crowded room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate our son Marcus's incredible achievement. Harvard University has recognized what we've always known, that we've raised an exceptional young man." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. My mother stood next, her own glass raised high. "Marcus, you've made us so proud. Your dedication, your talent, your character, everything we could have hoped for in a son. And Victoria," she continued, turning to my sister, "your modeling career is taking off beautifully. We know you'll achieve everything you dream of." My heart started racing as I waited for my name to be mentioned. Surely they would acknowledge me too. Surely, after everything I'd done to help make this party perfect, after all my academic achievements, after being their daughter for 17 years, I would get even a passing mention. My mother raised her glass higher. "Here's to our successful children and the bright futures ahead of them." The word children, plural, echoed in my mind as I realized with devastating clarity that she was only referring to Marcus and Victoria. I sat frozen in my chair, watching as the entire room toasted my siblings while I remained completely invisible, not even an afterthought, not even worth acknowledging. The applause continued, but all I could hear was the sound of my heart breaking. I looked around the room wondering if anyone else had noticed the glaring omission, but everyone was focused on my radiant siblings. Even extended family members who had known me my entire life seemed oblivious to the fact that the middle Monroe child had been completely erased from her own parents' celebration speech. I excused myself to the bathroom where I locked the door and finally let the tears fall. 17 years of feeling invisible culminated in this moment of absolute rejection. My own parents, in front of everyone who mattered in our community, had made it clear that I didn't count as one of their successful children. When I returned to the party trying to compose myself, I overheard my aunt asking my mother, "What about Scarlett? She's doing so well in school too." My mother's response was like a knife to the heart. "Oh, Scarlett. She's finding her way. Not everyone can be as naturally gifted as Marcus and Victoria. We're hoping she'll figure out something suitable eventually." That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, I would make it a reality. If they couldn't see my worth, I would build something so undeniable that they would be forced to acknowledge it. And when that day came, they would realize exactly what they had lost. I didn't know it then, but that humiliating night would become the catalyst for the most extraordinary transformation of my life. The girl they dismissed as finding her way was about to disappear completely, only to re-emerge as someone they could never ignore again. The months following Marcus's graduation party were a masterclass in systematic disconnection. I became a ghost in my own home, present but not participating, existing but not engaging. My parents, absorbed in Marcus's Harvard preparation and Victoria's increasingly demanding modeling schedule, barely noticed my gradual withdrawal. I used their indifference to my advantage. While they celebrated Victoria's latest magazine cover or discussed Marcus's freshman orientation, I was building my escape plan with the same methodical precision I applied to coding. Every ignored dinner conversation, every overlooked achievement, every casual dismissal of my aspirations fueled my determination to disappear completely. My plan began with financial independence. The inventory management app I'd developed had caught the attention of several small business owners through online forums. What started as a few $100 contracts quickly grew into a steady income stream. I created a separate bank account listing my address as a P.O. box I'd rented 3 towns over. By my senior year, I was earning more money than many adults, but my parents remained completely oblivious. "Scarlett seems quieter lately," I overheard my mother tell my father one evening. "Maybe she's finally growing out of that antisocial phase." They had no idea that their antisocial daughter was building a network of clients, investors, and tech industry contacts that would soon dwarf their own professional connections. While they worried about my social development, I was developing revolutionary software that was beginning to attract attention from major corporations. College applications became my first real test of independence. While my parents assumed I would apply to appropriate schools for someone of my capabilities, I secretly applied to MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon, all with full-ride scholarships based on a portfolio they had never seen. When acceptance letters started arriving, I intercepted them before my parents could see them. The day I turned 18, I executed the first phase of my disappearance. I legally changed my name from Scarlett Monroe to Scarlett Cross, choosing a surname that represented the crossroads of my old life and new beginning. The paperwork was filed in a county courthouse an hour away, ensuring my parents would never accidentally discover it. My high school graduation approached with its own delicious irony. My parents planned a modest celebration, nothing like Marcus's extravaganza, and invited only immediate family. They had no idea that their underachieving daughter was graduating as valedictorian with early admission to MIT, and a full scholarship that would cover not just tuition but provide a substantial living stipend. The night before graduation, I sat in my room for the last time, surrounded by boxes of belongings I would take to my new life. My laptop contained encrypted files with business plans, client contracts, and preliminary designs for technology that would eventually revolutionize 3 different industries. Hidden in my desk drawer was a bank statement, showing a balance that would have shocked my parents. Enough to fund my education and my business ventures, without ever needing their support. But the most important item was a letter I had written and rewritten dozens of times. It explained everything: my hurt, my disappointment, my decision to leave, and my determination to prove my worth without them. I planned to leave it on the kitchen counter the morning after graduation, ensuring they would find it only after I was gone. Graduation day arrived with typical Monroe family dysfunction. My parents attended the ceremony, took the obligatory photos, and made polite conversation with other families. When my name was called as valedictorian, I watched their stunned faces from the stage. They had no idea their disappointing daughter had earned the highest academic honors in her class. At the reception afterward, my parents seemed genuinely confused by the congratulations they received from other families. We had no idea Scarlett was so accomplished, they kept saying, as if my achievements had somehow happened without their knowledge. Which of course they had. That night at the small family dinner, they had planned something extraordinary happened that would make my disappearance even more satisfying. My father stood up with his wine glass, clearly attempting to recreate the magic of Marcus's celebration. "We want to toast our daughter," he began, his voice uncertain. "Scarlett, we're very proud of your graduation." But it was too little too late. The words felt hollow, obligatory, lacking the genuine pride and enthusiasm they had showered on my siblings. I smiled politely and accepted their congratulations, all while knowing it would be the last time they would have the opportunity to acknowledge me. The next morning, I left the house at dawn with my 2 suitcases and my laptop bag. My letter was placed prominently on the kitchen counter, along with my house key and the family phone I would no longer need. By the time my parents found it, I was already on a plane to Boston, using a ticket purchased with my own money under my new legal name. The letter was brief but devastating. "You made it clear that I don't count as one of your successful children. I've decided to prove you wrong somewhere else. Don't look for me. When I'm ready, you'll know exactly who I've become." Scarlett, I had planned this moment for months, but nothing could have prepared me for the exhilaration of complete freedom. As the plane lifted off, I wasn't just leaving my family. I was leaving behind every limitation, every doubt, and every moment of feeling invisible. The girl they had ignored was gone forever. In her place was someone who would build an empire so vast and successful that one day, inevitably, my parents would discover exactly what they had lost. And when that day came, I would be ready with the ultimate revenge indifference to their suddenly desperate desire for reconciliation. Listen, I know this turning point might sound dramatic, but sometimes life forces you to make impossible choices. Have you ever reached a moment where you realized you had to choose between your family's approval and your own self-worth? If you're dealing with something similar, I want you to know that your story matters too. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes walking away is the only way to walk toward your true potential. And if you're finding value in this journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the transformation that's coming next will blow your mind. MIT became my launching pad into a world where merit mattered more than family connections. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued innovation, intelligence, and ambition over conventional success markers. My professors recognized my potential immediately, and my fellow students became the kind of intellectual peers I had always craved. But even as I excelled academically, my real focus remained on building the business empire I had envisioned during those lonely nights in Westchester. The inventory management app that had started as a high school project evolved into something far more sophisticated under the guidance of MIT's entrepreneurship program. I spent my freshman year refining the software, adding features that addressed pain points I discovered through extensive market research. What had begun as a simple inventory tracker became a comprehensive business management platform that could handle everything from supply chain logistics to customer relationship management. The scope was ambitious, but my coding skills had evolved to match my vision. By sophomore year, I had caught the attention of venture capitalists who frequented MIT's startup incubator programs. My first major breakthrough came when TechFlow Dynamics, a mid-sized logistics company, agreed to beta test my platform across their entire operation. The results were extraordinary. They reduced operational costs by 30% and increased efficiency by nearly 50% within the first quarter. Word spread quickly through the business community. Companies that had been struggling with outdated management systems suddenly had access to technology that could transform their operations overnight. What made my platform unique wasn't just its functionality, but its intuitive design that made complex business management accessible to companies of any size. The validation was intoxicating, but what drove me most was the knowledge that somewhere in Westchester my parents remained completely unaware that their disappointing daughter was revolutionizing an entire industry. Every client success story, every venture capital meeting, every technological breakthrough was another step away from the girl they had dismissed. My junior year brought the opportunity I had been building toward a Series A funding round that would allow me to scale the business nationally. The presentation I gave to a room full of seasoned investors was the culmination of everything I had learned about business, technology, and the power of proving people wrong. Traditional business management software treats companies like they're all the same, I explained to the panel, my confidence unshakable. Our platform adapts to each business's unique needs, learning from their patterns and optimizing their operations in real time. We're not just selling software, we're selling transformation. The lead investor, a woman named Catherine Walsh who had built her own tech empire, asked the question that would define my future. Scarlett, what makes you certain this platform can scale to enterprise level? I smiled, thinking of every family dinner where my achievements had been dismissed, every celebration where I had been ignored, every moment when I had been made to feel invisible. Because I've spent my entire life understanding what it feels like to be underestimated, I know exactly how much potential gets wasted when people don't see what's right in front of them. We secured $12 million in funding that day. The transformation that followed was breathtaking. I hired a team of brilliant developers, established offices in Boston and San Francisco, and began pursuing enterprise contracts with Fortune 500 companies. The platform, which I had named AdaptFlow, became the fastest-growing business management software in the industry. But success brought an unexpected challenge: media attention. Tech journalists began covering our rapid growth, and industry publications wanted to feature the young CEO who was disrupting traditional business software. I had to make a crucial decision about how much of my personal story to reveal. I chose strategic anonymity. Interviews focused on the technology and the company's vision rather than my background. When pressed about my personal history, I simply said I came from a family that didn't understand technology and left it at that. The irony was delicious. My parents, who loved reading about successful people in business magazines, would never recognize their own daughter's achievements because they had never bothered to truly see me. By my senior year at MIT, Flow had grown to over 200 employees and was serving clients across 15 countries. The company's valuation had reached $500 million, making me one of the youngest female tech CEOs in history. Yet none of this success felt as satisfying as knowing my parents remained completely oblivious to my transformation. Graduation from MIT was a private affair. I invited no family, celebrated with my team and closest friends, and used the occasion to announce AdaptFlow's international expansion. The girl who had been ignored at her brother's graduation party was now running a company that would soon employ more people than lived in her hometown. The next 2 years brought explosive growth that exceeded even my most optimistic projections. Major corporations lined up to implement our software, competitors struggled to match our innovation pace, and industry analysts began predicting that AdaptFlow would become the dominant force in business management technology within the decade. When the company's valuation officially crossed $1 billion, making AdaptFlow a unicorn startup and me a billionaire before my 26th birthday, I felt a complex mix of triumph and melancholy. I had achieved everything I had dreamed of during those painful years of family rejection, but the people whose approval I had once craved most remained unaware of my success. That was exactly how I wanted it. Let them continue believing I was finding my way, while I built an empire that would soon make their own accomplishments seem trivial by comparison. The best revenge I had learned wasn't confrontation. It was becoming so successful that their ignorance of my achievements became a testament to their own blindness. But I underestimated the power of the internet and investigative journalism. Someone, somewhere, was about to connect Scarlett, billionaire CEO, with Scarlett Monroe, the disappeared daughter of a prominent Westchester family. The satisfaction of building something extraordinary while my family remained completely unaware was intoxicating. Every board meeting, every acquisition, every industry award felt like another nail in the coffin of their assumption that I would never amount to anything. I had become exactly what they said I could never be. Not just successful, but phenomenally, undeniably, world-changingly successful. The girl they had dismissed as finding her way had found her way to the top of an industry they didn't even understand existed. And the beautiful irony was that they had no idea they had lost their most valuable asset until it was far too late to matter. The article that changed everything appeared in Fortune magazine on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my corner office overlooking Boston Harbor when my assistant knocked on the door with an expression I had never seen before. "Scarlett, you need to see this," she said, placing the magazine on my desk with hands that were actually shaking. The headline read, "The Billion-Dollar Disappearing Act: How Scarlett Cross Built an Empire After Her Family Wrote Her Off." Below it was a side-by-side photo comparison, my official CEO headshot next to a high school yearbook photo that someone had somehow obtained. My heart stopped. The article was a masterpiece of investigative journalism that had connected every dot I thought I had hidden. It detailed my transformation from overlooked middle child to tech billionaire, complete with quotes from former classmates, MIT professors, and even some of my earliest clients who remembered working with a brilliant teenager named Scarlett Monroe. The journalist had somehow tracked down the story of Marcus's graduation party, interviewing several attendees who remembered the awkward moment when the toasts excluded one of the Monroe children. They had found my high school records, discovered my legal name change, and traced the evolution of AdaptFlow, from my original inventory app through its current billion-dollar valuation. But the most devastating part was the final paragraph. Monroe's parents, Richard and Patricia Monroe of Westchester County, could not be reached for comment. According to neighbors, the family has not spoken publicly about their daughter since her disappearance 7 years ago. Scarlett Cross Monroe has built one of the most successful tech companies of the decade, while maintaining complete separation from the family who failed to recognize her potential. I sat in stunned silence, knowing that my carefully constructed anonymity had been shattered. Within hours, this article would be everywhere. My parents would know exactly who I had become and what they had lost. My phone began ringing immediately. First, it was other journalists wanting follow-up interviews. Then came calls from business partners, investors, and employees who had no idea about my family background. The story was already being shared across social media, with commenters expressing everything from admiration for my success to outrage at my parents' treatment of me. But the call I was dreading most came that evening. I was working late trying to focus on anything other than the media frenzy when my assistant forwarded a call from a number I recognized, despite not seeing it for 7 years. "Scarlett." The voice was older, more uncertain than I remembered. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." The word sweetheart hit me like a physical blow. In 18 years of living under their roof, my mother had never called me sweetheart. That endearment had been reserved for Victoria, just as Champ and Buddy had been Marcus's special nicknames. "I prefer Scarlett Cross now," I said, my voice steady despite the emotional earthquake happening inside me. "Honey, we had no idea. We never knew you were doing so well." The article in Fortune, "Scarlett, we're so proud of you." The words I had longed to hear for decades felt hollow, now delivered 7 years too late, and only after the entire business world had forced my achievements into their awareness. "Are you proud of me, or are you proud of the billion-dollar company?" There was a long pause. "Scarlett, we know we made mistakes. We want to make things right. Can we see you? Can we talk? I'm very busy," I replied, which was both true and the biggest understatement of my life. "I'll have to call you back." I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. Within an hour, my security team informed me that reporters were gathering outside the building. By morning, there would be cameras, interviews, and endless questions about the family drama that had fueled my success. But the most surprising development came the next day. Victoria called the office directly, somehow convincing my assistant to put her through by claiming it was a family emergency. Scarlett, I know you probably don't want to talk to any of us. Victoria began, her voice smaller than I remembered. But I needed to tell you something. I always knew what Mom and Dad were doing to you. I was just too scared to speak up because I didn't want them to start treating me the same way. The admission hit me harder than my mother's desperate phone call. Victoria, the golden child, had been aware of my mistreatment all along, but had chosen her own protection over defending me. I'm not the same person you knew, I told her. That girl who needed your protection is gone. I can see that, Victoria said quietly. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And that I always knew you were capable of amazing things, even when they couldn't see it. After hanging up, I realized that the story breaking was both my worst nightmare and my greatest triumph. The whole world now knew exactly what my family had lost through their blindness and favoritism. But more importantly, they would see what I had built without them, despite them, and in defiance of every limitation they had tried to place on my potential. The girl they had dismissed was gone forever, replaced by a woman who had built an empire on the foundation of their rejection. Now that they finally wanted to claim me as their successful daughter, I had the ultimate power. The power to decide whether they deserved any place in the life they had once made me feel unworthy of living. The media frenzy that followed was unlike anything I had experienced. Tech blogs, business magazines, and even mainstream news outlets picked up the story. It became a symbol of family dysfunction, missed potential, and the power of proving your worth despite rejection. But more than that, it became a cautionary tale about what parents lose when they fail to see their children's true potential. The weeks following the Fortune article became a masterclass in the karma they never saw coming. Media outlets across the country picked up the story, framing it as the ultimate tale of family blindness and individual triumph. From family outcast to billionaire CEO became a trending topic, with my story being shared millions of times across social platforms. The public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. Comments poured in from people who had felt invisible in their own families, who had been underestimated by people who should have believed in them most. My story became a symbol of what was possible when you refuse to accept other people's limitations on your potential. But the most satisfying aspect was watching my family's desperate attempts to manage the public relations disaster they had created for themselves. Richard Monroe, the successful corporate lawyer, suddenly found himself fielding questions from colleagues about why he had failed to recognize his daughter's potential. Patricia Monroe, the prominent socialite, discovered that her charity galas were now topics of whispered conversation about parental blindness and favoritism. The irony was exquisite. My parents, who had always cared deeply about their social standing and public image, were now known primarily as the people who had been too blind to recognize their daughter's extraordinary capabilities. Their other children's achievements, once their pride and joy, seemed diminished in comparison to the empire I had built, despite their neglect. Marcus called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that progressed from casual to desperate. "Scarlett, it's Marcus. I know things were complicated growing up, but we're family. Can we talk?" became Scarlett, "Please call me back. I need to explain some things, and eventually, Scarlett, I'm begging you, just give me 5 minutes. But the most telling response came from my parents themselves. They hired a public relations firm to help manage the fallout, which only made the situation worse. When reporters asked about their daughter's success, their coached responses sounded hollow and defensive. "We always knew Scarlett was special. We're incredibly proud of everything she's accomplished." The problem was that their previous behavior contradicted every word they now spoke publicly. Former neighbors, family, friends, and even relatives began sharing their own memories of how differently I had been treated compared to my siblings. The narrative was beyond their control, and their attempts to rewrite history only highlighted their previous blindness more starkly. 6 months after the article broke, I received an unexpected visitor. My assistant informed me that Patricia Monroe was in the lobby, refusing to leave until I agreed to see her. Against my better judgment, I agreed to give her 10 minutes. My mother looked older than I remembered, her perfectly styled appearance slightly frayed around the edges. She sat across from my desk in the office that overlooked the harbor, her eyes taking in the evidence of my success with a mixture of wonder and regret. "I know you have every right to hate us," she began, her voice lacking its usual confident authority. "I know we failed you in ways that are unforgivable. But Scarlett, you're still our daughter. You'll always be our daughter." I leaned back in my chair, studying the woman who had toasted her successful children while erasing me from the family narrative. "I stopped being your daughter the night you made it clear I didn't count as one of your successes. That was your choice, not mine." "We were wrong," she said, tears starting to flow. "We were so wrong about everything. We got caught up in traditional measures of success and completely missed what was right in front of us. You were extraordinary, and we were too blind to see it." The apology I had dreamed of hearing as a teenager felt empty now. Where was this recognition when I needed it? Where was this pride when I was building my first app? When I was graduating as valedictorian? When I was 17 years old and desperate for even a moment of acknowledgement from my own parents? "I don't know," she whispered. "I honestly don't know how we could have been so stupid." I stood up, signaling that our meeting was ending. "The truth is, I don't need your recognition anymore. I built something incredible without your support, and that makes it even more meaningful. You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that the only validation that matters is the kind you give yourself." As she left, my mother turned back one final time. "Is there any chance, any possibility, that we could be a family again?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "You can be proud of me now if you want. You can tell people you're my mother if it makes you feel better. But the daughter who needed your love and support is gone. In her place is someone who learned to thrive without you. That's not punishment, that's just reality." The months that followed brought a strange sense of completion. My parents continued their attempts at reconciliation, but I had moved beyond needing their approval. Adapt Flow continued to grow, expanding into new markets and technologies that would shape the future of business management. I established a scholarship fund for overlooked students from dysfunctional families, ensuring that other young people wouldn't have to build their dreams entirely alone. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that the daughter who had been ignored was now providing opportunities for other forgotten children to achieve their potential. Recently, I learned that Marcus's marriage fell apart when his wife discovered how he had treated his weird sister growing up. Victoria's modeling career stalled when brands became uncomfortable with her association with our family's public image problems. My parents' social circle shifted as people began questioning their judgment and character. The revenge I had dreamed of during those painful teenage years had manifested in ways I never could have imagined. I hadn't needed to destroy them. They had destroyed themselves through their own blindness and favoritism. All I had done was succeed so dramatically that their treatment of me became impossible to ignore or defend. Last week's voicemail from my mother was the latest in a series of increasingly desperate attempts to reconnect. "Scarlett, honey, I know you're busy with your important work, but could we please have dinner? Just the two of us. I want to understand who you've become." I deleted the message without responding, just as I had deleted dozens of others. The woman who had failed to see my potential for 18 years didn't deserve access to the person I had become despite her neglect. As I look out at the harbor from my office, I realize that the best revenge isn't hatred or anger. It's the complete indifference that comes from building a life so fulfilling that the people who hurt you become irrelevant to your happiness. They wanted me to be invisible, and I granted their wish by disappearing completely. Now that they want me back, I have the ultimate power to remain gone. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from toxic family dynamics to build the life you deserved? Have you experienced the sweet satisfaction of succeeding despite people who underestimated you? Share your own stories of family karma in the comments below. If this tale of transformation resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning life's biggest betrayals into your greatest triumphs. Share this with anyone who's ever felt invisible in their own family. Sometimes the best way to be seen is to become impossible to ignore. Thank you for joining me on this journey of justice served cold, and remember, the people who can't see your worth today won't deserve your success tomorrow. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is build something so extraordinary that their blindness becomes their loss, not yours. Until next time, keep building your empire and never let anyone convince you that you're not enough.